All right, greetings everyone. How's it going? Happy-ish holiday. You can see that I'm sporting some red today. You know, I only have a handful of sweaters. It's, if it weren't the Christmas season, I might be wearing this anyway, but given that it is, hey, I just feel all the merrier. So, yeah, it is early December right now, and the thing I was thinking about before I sat down today is that I have now recorded enough of these episodes, and I think there's kind of enough of a line in this to actually make this thing public. So, yeah, I mean, like I've got probably about 10 of these things already sitting here, and I'm probably going to be rolling them out 2 or 3 at a time. Given that, they're not particularly time sensitive, I don't think it's going to matter the order that they're watched in or whatever that may be. But for those of you that are interested, this was something that I started to do in August and, kind of took a break. Took a break there at one point in the fall and kind of picked up again. So yeah, I mean, this is boy, time flies, but this is something I've been doing for about 4 months, I guess. Yeah, the last time I did one of these, I was talking about the environment, and I specifically got into California, and it pretty much stayed there because well, once you kind of get talking about what happens there, it was pretty easy to elaborate on the situation. And I, had a firsthand experience as somebody that lived there for 13 years, so I could kind of, testify, so to speak, about like how strange it is, to see these, in what's essentially a benign environment, to see, the extremes that we were experiencing there. But today, what I want to talk about is what I've experienced since I moved back to the Midwest this summer. And I think that I did record an episode earlier this summer where it wasn't specifically about the environment, but I talked about some of the strangeness that I've been experiencing. Someone that had not really been in the area for a long time. And, now with the benefit of time, I've had a chance to, do some research, listen to some reporters, and then there was the big climate report, which came out over the Thanksgiving weekend. And, with all those things put together, now I feel like I have kind of like a body of work to pull from, is what I would say about it. And what I can tell you is that this is not, what we're experiencing here, which is, it is just really mucky, We have this thing called wintry mix, which is a term that I wasn't even really familiar with until I heard some, guy mention it over at the Y a couple months ago on a night that turned out to be very cold. We are in like a wintry mix all the time over here right now. And I mean, what it is that we have, first of all, the sun has disappeared and, it ain't coming back anytime soon. Sunday, we had a beautiful day that touched, well into the 50s, which again is pretty strange to have in December, particularly when you've been having days that are in the 20s and 30s every day. But it was a a beautiful day the whole day long. And I really felt a sense of deja vu about, like, one, where did this come from? Because we hadn't seen the sun in a couple of weeks. And two, like, how do I take advantage of it before this thing is gone? And of course, when it's one day, I mean, good luck with that anyway. But anyway, I guess that would be a perfect thing to talk about. So, last week prior to this beautiful day, I mean, we had just getting up in the morning where it's very cold. It's like less than 30 degrees or about 30 degrees. And, driving to work with the heat on, trying to be cautious on the roads. But, that would be in a work week with 5 days. I mean, let's say that 2 of those days were that, like, climbing in and sitting down in a frozen seat first thing in the morning. But, on several days last week, I also went out in the morning where there was, no frost on the windshield, where it wasn't especially cold. And I actually just sat right down and started the car, and it happened to be raining. And then, there was a day last week when I was at school where I did my laundry after school. This has been, it was last week and the week before that, where basically it had started the day with rain, which eventually turned into snow. So, or, the day that I was at school, and this is maybe 3 weeks ago, I just want to escape the harsh fluorescent lights, for an hour or so. And so I, on my break, my planning period, I pop into my car, drive over to the Panera Bread, get myself a nice cherry pastry, from the pastry case. A cheese Danish with cherries on it. I don't know. I guess they just called it cherry over there. Anyway, but it is snowing. It is snowing. It's we have these little flakes, which are like the size of like part of my little finger here, in my index finger. They're just beautiful, cascading through the air. But you know what happened later? Like, I mean, like, it's, I was talking to the guy in line, talking about how beautiful it was, how nice it was and peaceful it was snowing. He said, yeah, but this is Ohio. It won't last. And, yeah, it didn't. So, now, in all these cases, what we're talking about is rain, like in my little example of 5-day weeks, we had some cold weather, and some days that just stayed cold and dreary, But we also had these kind of warmish days that climbed up into the 40s and, stayed gray, everything else. You know what happened? It rained. And so, it rains and rains, and, we are not like, it's not a rainy season here. These are not, we are having April showers in December, and that's just weird. And what I can tell you is, like, since I moved here back in the summer, which was a very humid summer by and large, even days where it didn't get particularly hot, it did stay particularly humid. And there was a lot of rainfall. And this is weird, I mean, rain in an agricultural setting is a good thing. Farmers like humidity, they like rain, but, like in all things, it's, people like it in proportion. What's happening is that we are getting the country's rain right here, and you know, we last year there was a flood in Cincinnati, you know, um, that's saying something. You know, and I think it was the first time that had happened in, since the 50s, I believe. I remember reading, or it happened in 96, but prior to that it hadn't happened. But I mean, in order for the Ohio River to flood, we're talking about a lot of rainfall. I was driving by, yeah, Dayton. I was driving to work. What was it, yesterday? Day before, maybe? Or maybe it was, but anyway, just in the last couple of days, I drove over the Little Miami River on my way into work and noticed that it was massive. The river was full, and this is harmful. I mean, first of all, it creates kind of like a permanent feeling of drear, which is not good for the psyche. I don't think it is good for anybody's um, sense of self-esteem, possibly. Uh, you know, um, because we all thrive on sunlight and that kind of thing. Um, but also too, your motivation is what I was talking about. I mean, like it definitely, it puts a crimp on my style when it's crappy out. Uh, but the other thing beyond this is that, you know, it's creating a environmental problem. We have some of the world's best soil in this area, but what happens is, when it rains, it makes it very hard for the farmers ever even to put in their crops. And what about that soil? That beautiful, rich soil. When there's so much water, isn't it just run off? It run off the land. And where do these things go? These chemicals travel. They're going to get into our water. We already found out. I mean, the story with polluted water. I feel like we're just at the tip of the iceberg with this thing. But let's face it. We have a lot of high-powered everything that's out there, and I mean, once bad news will travel, and it's a concern because we spray everything, and that creates runoff. It means the chemicals get into the wrong places. It gets into the water system. It's going to make growing things to be much more difficult, and it's going to have a harmful effect on this economy here. What we don't have a lot of here in the Midwest is we don't have an abundance of people, and so like everywhere else, your strengths have to be exploited, and a lot of that here has to do with the production of things and the moving of goods, and it just like it's going to be a factor. We already found out that if things this is going to have a long-term effect on the economy. What I would say is that it probably already is, because when it is raining / snowing 5 days a week for months on time, months on end, how motivated are you really going to be? So, check this stuff out. Yeah, there was an interesting report that came out on WBUR in Boston recently, where somebody was talking with an agricultural scientist about the future we're looking at in the Midwest, and I would read the government's report. I guess the thing that's hard about when you talk about this is that I don't want the theme of this thing to be just avoid the Midwest, because let's be realistic about this. There could also be an episode of really an episode of, avoid the West Coast, avoid the Southwest, avoid the East Coast, because, there's going to have, the extremes of the winter season. So this is something that is affecting us all. But what I think the takeaway should be is that, this idea of, it doesn't matter as long as I don't see it, it doesn't happen in my backyard. Well, it does matter because it is happening and it's happening now. So that's all I have to say today. All right. Cheers.